وعد الله لا يخلف الله وعده. The promise of Allah Azza wa Jal, and He never fails in His promise. It's just the shaitan which is scaring you. الشيطان يعدكم الفقر ويأمركم بالفحشاء. The shaitan scares you with poverty and commands you to do that which is haram. You know, an interesting statement came to my mind of Hasan al-Basri rahimahullah ta'ala. You know what he said, brothers and sisters? قرأت في 90 موضعا أن الله قدر الأرزاق. I read in 90 places that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He decreed a person's provision. وقرأت في موضع واحد أن الشيطان يخوف أولياءه. And I read in one place that the shaitan, he scares the people. And it's the ayah that I just mentioned. الشيطان يعدكم الفقر ويأمركم بالفحشاء. What does Allah Azza wa tell us in Surah Talaq? ومن يتق الله يجعل له مخرجا ويرزقه من حيث لا يحتسب. Whoever has taqwa, Allah Azza wa Jalla will give him an opening, and He'll provide for him from where he doesn't expect it. But subhanallah, you find that maybe sinning is a means of losing provision. It came in another hadith. إِنَّ الرَّجُلَ لَيُحْرَمُ رِزْقُهُ بِخَطِيئَةٍ يَعْمَلُهَا. A person is deprived of provision because of the mistake that he does, or the sin that he falls into. Let's now come on to the real life examples. Wallahi brothers, I can sit here till tomorrow, tell you story after story of brothers who were involved in haram. Whether it was taking boxes that had khamar in there, whether it was dealing with riba. I had a friend, my neighbor in Leicester, who used to deal with riba-based accounting. We know the famous hadith of Jabir radiallahu ta'ala anhu, when the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, لَعَنَ اللَّهُ آكِلَ الرِّبَا وَمُوكِلَهُ وَكَاتِبُ وَشَاهِدَيْهِ وَقَالَ هُمْ فِيهِ سَوَاء. The one that takes it, the one that gives it, the one who's a witness to it. All of them have been cursed. The Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said they're all equal. He knew what he was doing was haram. He knew that. I told him this hadith and I said to him, you have to be very patient. The hadith that I told you about earlier. Of course, he went through trouble. I remember his in-laws were saying to him, what's this guy? He's a bum, he's staying at home. What's he doing? All day he's at home. They were literally like, belittling him. And I would tell him, be patient. Normally, when a person he applies for a job in Saudi Arabia, most guys, they get a job in places like Riyadh, Jeddah, Qasim, Dammam. And wallahi, brothers and sisters, I believe he ended up getting this job because of him leaving this for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal. And it's the promise of Allah Azza wa Jal. Allah Azza wa Jal gave him and his wife £21,000 a year, no tax. Here we work for the government, right? Every month we have to pay tax. All the money goes back to the government. No tax. He was paying no tax. He's living in Mecca. Every day they're going to the Haram. And he was chilling. It wasn't even like the normal, teaching English jobs that you have in other cities. Another brother, I remember, subhanAllah, he was working in car phone warehouse. He was commuting all the time from Leicester to Loughborough. It takes like half an hour. At the end of the week, you find that the petrol money, it adds up. And I remember his wage was something like what? 12,000 or 13,000, something like that. His name is Brother Najib. He lives right next to me as well. And until this very day, subhanAllah, I see him, I remember this. Same thing. All of a sudden now they introduced insurance. They introduced insurance. He said to them, this is not part of my religion, and he opposes it. I can't do this. To cut a very long story short, he ended up what? Leaving the job. And I remember bumping into him. He looked, quite. I told him the hadith. He left the job. Wallahi, I would see him at dhuhr time making one of these sincere du'as. You could see the brother was struggling. And of course, like I said earlier, you're going to go through trials and tribulations, right? أَحَسِبَ النَّاسُ أَن يُتْرَكُوا أَن يَقُولَ آمَنَّا وَهُمْ لَا يُفْتَنُونَ. You think you're not going to be trialed? Wallahi, I remember Allah Azza wa Jal replaced this job with British Gas. Remember earlier I said he used to commute 30 minutes every single day. And sometimes there's traffic, the petrol adds up. 10 minutes from his home. 10 minutes from his home. And I think he was earning something like, later on, 16,000, 17,000, amongst them lines. And another brother as well, subhanAllah, I might get carried away, mentioning all these stories. His name is Jubed. He comes to my lessons sometimes in Leicester. I think Imran and them, they know him. Same thing. He was working in the same job, he left. Allah Azza wa Jal gave him a job right next to his house. So the point of the matter is, guys, you know your life is very, very short. You're going to go through trials and tribulations. Wallahi, it is not worth it. For you to die, كما قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم لا يدخل الجنة لحم نبتت من سحت. Any piece of flesh that has been produced through haram will not enter into Jannah. All of these ayat, ahadith, brothers and sisters, is for us to apply. Just